vaccines. And Mark, I think it's good that we're finally starting to see some people standing up to challenge the global vaccine industry.
Indeed. The Attorney General of the state of Texas, Ken Paxton, survived an impeachment attempt, and he's moving full steam. This just in pretty recently, dated November 30th. Here's a press release. Part of what it says: Attorney General Ken Paxton sues Pfizer for misrepresenting COVID-19 vaccine efficacy and conspiring to censor public discourse. Of course, they're not really traditional vaccines, but we'll leave that aside. The first bit of this press release: Texas Attorney General Paxton, I was still reading that. Let's go back to the first. Has sued Pfizer Incorporated for unlawfully misrepresenting the effectiveness of the company's COVID-19 jab and attempting to censor public discussion of the product. Pfizer engaged, says Paxton, in false, deceptive, and misleading acts and practices by making unsupported claims regarding the company's COVID-19 vaccine in violation of a law, the Texas Deceptive Trade Practices Act. Now we'll move on. And here's a little bit more meat. I'll just pick out the highlights. The pharmaceutical company's widespread representation that its vaccine possessed 95% efficacy against infection was highly misleading, says the press release. The metric represented a calculation of the so-called relative risk reduction for vaccinated individuals in Pfizer's initial clinical trial results. FDA publications indicate relative risk reduction is a misleading statistic that, quote, unduly influences consumer choice. Moving on in the bottom of this slide, in fact, Pfizer's product failed to live up to the company's representations, alleging COVID-19 cases increased after widespread vaccine administration, and some areas, says Paxton, saw a greater percentage of deaths from COVID-19 among the vaccinated population than the unvaccinated. When the failure of its product became apparent, Pfizer admitted to silencing truth tellers. The lawsuit notes, quote, how did Pfizer respond when it became apparent that its vaccine was failing and the viability of its cash cow was threatened? The answer: by intimidating those spreading the truth and by conspiring, oh, dare he say the word conspiring, to censor its critics. Pfizer labeled as criminals, says Paxton, those who spread facts about the vaccine. It accused them of spreading, of course, misinformation, and it coerced social media platforms to silent prominent truth tellers. A very important part of this press release. Moving on from there, and here's a key quote and a picture of Mr. Paxton. The facts are clear. Pfizer did not tell the truth about their COVID-19 vaccines, whereas the Biden administration weaponized the pandemic to force illegal public health decrees on the public and enrich pharmaceutical companies. I will use every tool to protect our citizens who were misled and harmed by Pfizer's actions. Some bold statements. A lot of people are going to hope that Paxton is going to back that up with sustained and genuine action. Now, here's a little bit from a pro-pharma website, generally pro-pharma. This is a picture, of course, of Paxton putting out the first pitch at a Houston Astros game. Texas AG Paxton fires off another lawsuit at Pfizer. This isn't the only, evidently. This one over the company's COVID-19 vaccine. Moving on from there. Here's a little bit. I'll keep it relatively brief. Texas General Ken Paxton is going after Pfizer again, less than 2 weeks after documents were unsealed showing that Texas has accused Pfizer and manufacturer Pharma of providing a compromised ADHD medicine to the state. Now Paxton has sued Pfizer for unlawfully misrepresenting the effectiveness of the company's COVID-19 vaccine, Comirnaty. In May, this is back in May, Paxton announced that the state launched an investigation into whether Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, the big three, conducted gain-of-function research and the possibility that these companies manipulated trial data. So Paxton has a broader scope going on here than initially meets the eye. Paxton's office did not immediately respond to questions about Moderna. Is he going to sue them and Johnson & Johnson? Evidently, we don't know that yet. The COVID-19 vaccine lawsuit comes right after Paxton accused Pfizer and Tris Pharma of knowingly providing a compromised ADHD drug, Equivalent XR, to the state's Medicaid program. In response, Pfizer replied, it believes the state's case has no merit and will move to dismiss the case in due course. And moving on from there, we'll summarize here. Lest we forget, back in 2009, Pfizer pays $2.3 billion to settle a marketing case, and this first couple sentences says it all in terms of the trustworthiness and reputation of Pfizer. The pharmaceutical giant, this from the New York Times, Pfizer agreed $0.3 billion to settle civil and criminal allegations, civil and criminal, that it had illegally marketed its painkiller Bextra, and that drug was withdrawn. And get this, let's not forget, it was the largest healthcare fraud settlement and the largest criminal fine of any kind ever. Any kind ever. So, of course, it begs the question why the government went in both feet with Pfizer to begin with that in its record. Back to you, Brian.
Mark, thank you very much for that. Well, it's encouraging that we have got people standing up to try and challenge these giants in court. Of course, they have more or less unlimited money to fight court cases. But if the evidence is good enough, we can expect the right result. And they did get that huge fine previously. So we need more people digging on the data. And UK Column is going to be assisting with that. We'll talk more about that in the news on Wednesday.